Hello, Liverpool fans. Welcome to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. Coach Ralph and I are excited to bring you this podcast. From games to players to club news, we cover everything LFC. You can find us on every platform and YouTube. Please take a second to follow or subscribe to the podcast. That way, you know when the latest podcast is up. Thank you for listening, and now on to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Salim, and I'm joined by my other co-host, Coach Ralph. Coach, how you doing today?
Doing great. The team started with a win, so that's always going to be a positive.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into this game. It was an early one here in Denver, the early kickoffs that Jurgen doesn't like. Is at 5:30 in the morning here for me, but I woke up and turned the game on and was very happy with the performance overall. There was obviously kind of a tale of two halves. What was your kind of general feeling of the first half?
Overall, I think many things happened in the game that we maybe anticipated from our talk last week. In as much as Ipswich, it's their first game back, they're up for it. They have a lot of players on the squad who have been at Premier League clubs but maybe haven't quite made it. They're good players, maybe not quite at the top level, but they're good and they want to show something. And the manager has done a great job. And I thought he set the team up well. And it was a tricky first half for Liverpool. I think some will look at the game and think, oh, well, Liverpool, with all the players they have, will come in, everything blazing, all guns blazing, and they will take the game to Ipswich. But it was pretty much along the lines of what I think that we could have anticipated.
Yeah, it's interesting how people, there's pundits that say, oh, Liverpool should walk all over them. And then they turn around and from the other side of their mouth, they say there's no easy game in the Premier League.
Exactly.
So
exactly. And look, I think Ipswich showed some promise, but I think once they get to the fifth, sixth game of the season, I think going to Portman Road will be a different proposition because there's not that optimism that they had coming into their first game back.
Yeah, and tough start for them to go against Liverpool and then next week at the Etihad for Manchester City. But at least they kind of get these games out of the way, and and then we'll see how they do.
Yes,
the goals by Diogo Jota in the 60th minute, very nice build-up play. Trent finds Mo Salah on like a backdoor cut, and Diogo, and then Mo just lays it on a platter for Diogo Jota, and he scores. I really thought Jota would have a good game, and he did. He missed a header, I think, minutes earlier that just went wide on a cross from Trent. But overall, I thought he played really well, and then Mo, an assist, and then 5 minutes later gets his goal. So, I mean, what a consistent player Mo Salah has been, and 9 goals in the first game of the Premier League, which is a new record. Congrats to Mo Salah. And there was a lot of really good performances. The second half overall, I thought maybe it was kind of two things that maybe Ipswich Town kind of wore down a little bit from the high pressing they were doing in the first half, and Liverpool just kind of took the game over by establishing themselves on the ball.
Yes, and I think that Liverpool, it's kind of difficult to know because you don't know what happens behind the scenes. I thought they were passing for the sake of it at times in the first half, especially around their own penalty box. Mm-hmm. And Ipswich, as you say, did a good job in terms of their pressing and pushing up high up the field. But the fact is that while they were doing that, they play with a high line. And I think that Liverpool were more prepared to go directly to greater effect in the second period. And I think you're correct in your assessment of maybe Ipswich started to run out of gas a little bit, because I think the stats were 3 shots in the first half, 15 in the second. So I think that kind of gives you a flavour for how the game turned and how the momentum turned in the game. So it was a different performance in the second half, and I think the goal was different in as much as they looked to play behind and through the high back line of Ipswich Town in the second period.
Yeah, you're right about the high line and the high back line. It's interesting because I was very interested in how Arne Slot would talk about the game, and he mentioned that they were playing 1v1 all over the pitch, and that he was saying that they were losing. Liverpool lost too many duels, which I think is why Kwanzaa got hooked at halftime. And that he mentioned that when these things happen, don't play short, play it over the top. And it's just nice to hear like a coach talk about the tactical adjustment that what he talked to the team about at halftime. And it's nice to see that we have somebody that does have a football brain, that's not kind of going to blow smoke up everybody's what about, what they needed to do, or just cliche type of talk. So that was really interesting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it'll take some time to get used to Arne Slot, because, again, as we keep saying ad nauseum, Klopp was such a dominant and charismatic personality. Slot, I mean, I wouldn't say Slot, from what we've seen so far, is shy, but he's never going to live up to that side of his predecessor. So we need to take time to adjust. But you're correct in as much as there's clearly a tactician there in his coaching makeup, and he looks to see what the other team does, and he's honest in his evaluation of his own team, and that's why he made the change. Yeah.
Well, I didn't necessarily notice Kwanzaa having such losing the duels as Slot said it, but there's definitely a difference in the second half when Konate came on. But also Slot talks about the team, and he mentioned the team, not individual players, and it's interesting that, these are the things that he believes. Like, that it's not just him kind of saying it, because they were talking to him about Mo Salah and is he going to be the main man in his squad? And he said, I don't believe that much in one man. I believe in the team more than an individual. And then he continued to talk about how Salah's goal revolved around a good run and a good build-up play and some really good passing. So that's really good to see that, he could have praised Mo Salah a lot, and instead he just kind of deflected the question by really giving credit to the whole team.
Yeah, I think he's definitely, he's in the first phase of trying to build a team. The issue right now, some will say, is that it's a group of players that he's inherited. And so he has to put his own stamp on it, and it's not going to happen overnight. And It doesn't matter whether his predecessor was a legend or whoever his predecessor was. He has to put his own stamp on the team. And I think that's maybe reflected to some degree in some of the things that are happening behind the scenes in terms of Sailor Bobby Clark, for example, because he was a young academy player that really made his mark last year. And he's a very good player and he's got potential. But I think he's already decided that within the realm of who he has right now and what he would like to change, that he doesn't see a place for Clark. So I guess that's why he's being moved on. Although I do believe that they have, I think they have a buyback clause, if I'm not mistaken. I know they have a sell-on clause, but I think they might have a buyback clause as well. So keeping the options open, I think keeping the options open is smart by the club and the recruitment team overall. But I think he's in a phase where he's just starting to make his stamp of authority on the team and to start molding it in the direction he would like it to go in.
Yeah, I want to talk about one player in particular that did not play, Endo, and it was very clear to me why Slot doesn't prefer that kind of player, because Gravenberch did such a good job kind of moving the ball forward and making some runs through the middle, carrying the ball. It was that, and I just looked at it and said, "Oh, right, Endo doesn't do that." And this is kind of the player that he wants, that he likes in his sixth spot, and it made a lot of sense. What'd you think about that?
Yeah, the Gravenberch situation, I think that we've got to give it more time. In the first half, when Ipswich were doing well, he conceded a number of fouls. Most of them were kind of iffy.
Yeah.
But he didn't really seem to have a place within the game at that point. But you could say that about a number of Liverpool players.
Yeah.
The second half, he did better. But I think that I'd like to see him in a game where the team is put under more pressure and where there's more emphasis on, can he do the job in front of the central defenders?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is going to be key. First half, Liverpool's fullbacks didn't really get forward. Second half, we started to see shades of last season where all of a sudden they're making a mark on the game. And I think looking at those players in particular, I believe that it's got to be a number 6 that can do the dirty work in the big game. And can Gravenberch do that? I don't think we've seen enough to suggest that he can. But you could also say that we haven't seen enough to suggest that he can't. So that remains to be seen.
Overall, he had a pretty decent game, especially in the second half. And I thought Szoboszlai also came into the game in the second half. Like you said, we could probably talk about a lot of the players that did not play particularly well in the first half, but you can also say on the back end, the second half, a lot of players did kind of play well. You mentioned the fullbacks and Gravenberch in the second half, but Szoboszlai was really, really good in the second half. I was texting some buddies of mine and saying, Szoboszlai better watch out because McAllister might take that spot and higher up the pitch, and they might move somebody else into that midfield. And then Szoboszlai just exploded in the second half. I thought he was really good.
Yeah, I thought he had a great game, Szoboszlai. And he offers a lot because physically he's very athletic, strong, good speed, technically good. And he definitely has a creative side to his game. And he has the added threat of what he brings outside the box with his shooting from distance. Mm-hmm. So there's some tools in his armory for sure. Interesting though, overall, I thought that McAllister had a pretty quiet game. I thought he and Robertson in particular in the first half maybe didn't put their best foot forward. I think it was different with Robertson in that he hasn't played much and he definitely looked rusty. But when the team improved in the second half, he was he was playing his part, but maybe he needs games to get back up to fitness. I think the issue with McAllister is he's just played so much football, and will he need to be rotated more, say during the early part of the season? I mean, because Elliott didn't play, for example. Elliott didn't play at all.
Yeah.
And maybe Elliott would have played if he hadn't have made the change at half-time at the back. because I think most of these managers, when they go into games, I think the only time that they're going to change at the back is if there's an injury or they feel that a player is struggling. I don't think they want to sub at the back. I think, that they want to add players in areas where they can hurt the opposition. So Harvey Elliott, I'm sure he's disappointed because he had an excellent pre-season, but as we said, going through the pre-season, this isn't really the Liverpool team because so many were absent.
Yeah, I kind of noted the changes in defense also. Obviously, Kwanzaa came out at halftime for Konate, and then it was weird to see both Trent being subbed for Connor Bradley and Robo being subbed for Tsimikas. I just looked up and said, "Wow, they subbed 3 of the 4 defenders off the pitch." It's just not something you see regularly, so it was interesting.
But my feeling with the fullbacks is that they add so much to the offense, and Liverpool at that point were absolutely dominating, and both Bradley and Tsimikas offer something going forward. So I would guess from a managerial perspective, he's going to look at it and say, well, bringing these guys on is not a defensive move. It's a move to keep momentum. Mm-hmm. Plus, he's giving minutes to the players coming in, who I think will both play this season for one reason and another. And then for Robertson, he's coming back after a series of injuries, so it nurses him a little bit. With Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's probably looking at it and thinking, well, he's a top player. Let's manage his minutes because we're going to need him. And let's face it, Bradley is awesome going forward.
Yeah, he really is.
He's got energy. He's dangerous. He gets into positions, and his work rate is high, so he's going to get back and cover. So he's an attacking threat, but not in the same way as Trent.
Yeah, he almost scored. I mean, they got in the box, had a good shot.
Yeah. And so one thing that I think is very interesting, because obviously there's all this discussion how Liverpool haven't signed players, and but people are pointing out about the players that haven't signed extensions to their contracts, Alexander-Arnold being one. So who knows what's going on in the background, and maybe something that's in the manager's mind is, I've got to give time to Bradley, because if Alexander-Arnold goes, then he's kind of next in line.
Yeah.
So, so he wants a good season and he wants him contributing.
And also giving these guys minutes, overall you have squad happiness, and overall managing minutes is a good thing in a long season. I mean, we have 3 other competitions we're going to be a part of, and probably get relatively far in all of them. So it's a good.
Well, I think that's Look, I think that'll always be the manager's goal. Is how far can they get? So I think that when the League Cup comes into view, for example, I'd be very surprised if he starts Alexander-Arnold. So Bradley, same with Robertson, Tsimikas. He may choose to play Virgil van Dijk. I don't know. But, I mean, he will pick a certain amount of players to bring leadership to the team.
Yeah.
But, yes, go on.
How do you... what do you think of the Kwanzaa getting hooked at halftime? And did you see kind of what Arne Slot kind of was talking about in the post-game conference, that he was losing too many duels? He didn't say that like per se, but then he said Konate came in and won most of his duels. So it was just kind of, okay, that's you must have been thinking that Kwanzaa wasn't doing that.
Right. Well, I was surprised when he got hooked, But my guess is, I mean, look, they have all those coaches down there. It's very different from how it used to be. So like they're analyzing the game in so many different ways. And Ipswich got, what did they get? Like 3 yellow cards in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, in the first 24 minutes. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Early in the game, like they got yellows. I didn't think they were dirty or anything. I mean, because most of the fouls were probably enthusiasm, getting over enthusiastic about the challenges is possibly how I would put it. And I think that Liam Delap up front, in a sense, because he's central, he's a big guy, he's physical. He has some skill, but he's also quite physical. I think maybe he was the leader in a sense, because of what he brings to the table. So I guess that the manager must have looked at it and said, "Well, I'm like Konate's very physical.
Yeah,
I don't think he's as good good on the ball like Quansah." So he made the change, and I think the undercurrent of it as well is that he's letting the team know that he's prepared to make changes. I mean, because thinking back to the Euros, the way that everybody got on the case of Gareth Southgate won't make changes. I think that you saw the total opposite there. That Arne Slot saying, "I will make changes if I feel it's necessary," and he did. If Quansah stayed on the field, would it have been different in the second half? Possibly, because I think that they'd made the decision maybe to be a little more direct. But I think that there's a secondary issue there, which is the manager letting the players know he's in charge.
Yeah. What else kind of stood out to you, Coach, in the game? Was anything tactically or just any single player that stood out to you while you were watching it?
Well, the players that stood out, we mentioned Szoboszlai. I thought Szoboszlai had a very good game, and let's hope he can keep that up through the season because he's obviously talented. Diaz, I thought was lively. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Diaz, given all the paper talk, because he's a very good player. But does he have that final touch consistently? I think that's the question mark, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Because he certainly caused Ipswich problems. I mean, even in the first half, when maybe the team wasn't quite up to speed and a little bit flat, I thought Diaz still looked lively and looking to play, buzzing around, but does he have that final touch on a consistent basis? But I thought he had a good game overall, Szoboszlai, and I'm trying to think who else stood out. Obviously, in the second half, Alexander-Arnold really came into the game, and Salah, of course. I mean, Salah was quiet in the first half. But once they started to find him on a regular basis, then it's a different situation. And his awareness for the first goal, where he just gets the ball, he's actually looking in the other direction, but he's aware of what Jota is doing, and then puts it on a plate for him, basically. And great goal, great move, great goal. And so Salah's taking a lot of the plaudits, but for me, I think that Szoboszlai was a key part of that win on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree, and I thought it was a interesting tactic. They kind of like isolated Salah on the right side for those long balls, like the one Virgil hit long, I think on the second goal, when he it just seemed that they were kind of on the left side and then just isolating Salah on the right side, which happened a couple of times, even on the first goal, when it just seemed like Salah was just alone there, and Trent hit him with a pass on the ground, and then he found Jota. That was kind of an interesting tactic, I thought.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a reprise of the Klopp era, that because if you look at it, both fullbacks and Van Dijk, they can all knock a good long ball. And I think Liverpool, the last few seasons, have never been shy of switching the field quickly if they need to and if they have to. So I guess that was a little bit of a reprise of what we've seen in the past. And coming into the fact, as we noted earlier, that Ipswich was running out of gas a little bit, the discipline goes, and Liverpool have been there before. And so Salah's in the game, and he's causing problems, and he did.
Yeah, when talking about Szoboszlai, I have this like picture in my head of him kind of like running with his head cut off under Klopp, just like running everywhere, and he looked much more controlled under Slot in his role now. Did you see that as well?
I can't say that I noted that particularly, but I guess a lot of the word coming back from the players is that they're looking for more midfield control under Slot. I mean, because if you think of Liverpool's midfield, they were very, very high work rate, pressure. The forwards would press, and then the midfield would come in, sweep up, win the ball, and then get it quickly up to the forwards. Like, that was very much the Klopp way of doing it. And it seems like under Slot, while they might press at times, I think he wants more control in the midfield in terms of using the ball and maybe being more creative.
Yeah. And it makes sense, when you state it like that, and you think back to the team that won the league and the midfield there, Henderson, he's a very good player, but I don't think you can categorize him as like a great player. I thought he did such a good job. I'm a huge fan of his. Fabinho, again, I think kind of in that same thing. You'd say he's a really good player, but is he a great player? And you just kind of have now these, Szoboszlai's ceiling, I think, is so much higher than those guys. And McAllister, we know, just technically is a much better player than both those guys. So it's interesting that, Klopp had this, what do you call it? The engine of the team, the midfield. And then, now we have some guys that are a little bit more technical, a little bit more skill levels a little bit higher than the previous midfield. So it makes sense to kind of have them run the game as well.
Right. I mean, it's a more technical midfield, and maybe that's characterized most perhaps by the two smallest players, which is McAllister and Elliott. But both Szoboszlai and Gravenberch are big guys, very athletic. So there's kind of a nice mix and match, I would say, if you look at the midfield. If you look at the midfield that Liverpool has, it'll be interesting to see how the manager works them all going through the season, because you've got Curtis Jones as well, who's a bigger player, but I think is more of a technical player. And it's just going to be very interesting. We've seen one game, and it's always going to be hard to make conclusions or draw conclusions from just the one match.
Of course. Yeah, but good start though, and
good start to the season. Yeah. Coming back to what we said right at the beginning of the podcast, Ipswich presented what we thought they might, which was the enthusiasm of the first game back. And actually, Portman Road, one thing that I noticed, because I mean it's years since they've been in the top division, but it seems to be a lot bigger than it used to be. So there's a bigger crowd there. They're up for it. Cameras are on Ed Sheeran all the time, and so there's all that side of it too. And they definitely gave a good account of themselves, but I think overall, in the final analysis, Liverpool just had too much class, too much experience. And it's not like they're playing on a kind of a muddy patch and the rain's teeming down or anything like that. I mean, like the modern game's got beautiful fields I think the majority of times it'll favour the skillful team.
Yeah, the Ed Sheeran thing. They're like, oh, he's a minority owner now, and it's like 1.4% or something.
Right. Well,
and he sponsored the shirts, I guess, for his store.
Yes. Oh well, good on them. Take advantage of the local hero, as it were.
Right. Is there anybody else that stood out, whether good or bad, from a performance standpoint to you?
I think we pretty much touched on it. Robertson struggled, but got better. I thought McAllister didn't really show anything in the first half, and possibly overall, but we all know what a good player he is. And as I noted earlier, for me, the best player on the day was Szoboszlai and maybe Diaz in second place.
Okay. So moving ahead to next week, we have Brentford at Anfield. Now, Slot being the first manager in the Premier League to win his debut, congrats to that. But like you stated, it's one game, and Brentford's going to offer a different challenge. Did you watch the Brentford game against Wolves, right?
I only saw the highlights. I'm a big fan of the manager.
Crystal Palace, pardon me. It was Crystal Palace. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the manager of Brentford, and he does a great job, and he changes his tactics as needs be. And they're dangerous up front. And of course, we will get an early look at Carvalho coming back to Anfield. So I think most people will look at it on paper and say, "Oh well, that should be a straightforward win for Liverpool." But Brentford can cause problems, and I think Liverpool have had some problems with them in the past. So I would anticipate a win, but at the same time, I think they'll have to work for it. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah,
I think they'll have to work for the win.
Yeah, the Brian Mbeumo scored. Him and Wisa look really dangerous together. They link up really well, and Ivan Toney didn't even play, so it looks like he's looking to move on potentially. But you said they're a good squad. It was a good win. They got a little bit lucky. Eze hit a incredible free kick that for some reason was called back due to some tussling. But the game was pretty good. I like that team. Like you said, they are a good team. They are a tough team. They have some attacking powers. It'll be interesting to see. Do you think that Kwanzaa will start again, or did Slot notice something that now he's going to just kind of lean on Konate?
Yep, it'll be interesting to see what. Of course, we don't know his thoughts on it. Kwanzaa's a ball-playing centre half. That's how I would put it. I mean, he's physical, but he's not quite the out-and-out physical of a Konate. And, he's younger as well. So whether that side develops in his game in coming seasons, we have to wait and see. Excuse me. But I have a feeling that he'll probably go with Konate.
Yeah.
And the reason is both Wisa and Mbeumo. Like, they're both physical, fast players. And so I think that might be at the forefront of his mind as he looks to match up with them. So I would anticipate Konate. It's a shame that they don't have a League Cup game in midweek, because it would give an opportunity to maybe give the Bradleys and the Elliots a run, just to see how they are coming along and, keep them up to speed. I think I read somewhere that, that they've arranged a behind the doors, or they had a behind closed doors game. Not sure who it was with, though.
Like after Saturday?
Yeah. Oh. I'm not sure if that happened on Sunday. I'm not 100% sure on that, but so yeah, the next couple of weeks are going to be interesting from the point of view of how he beds in his team, and then a lot of the things that's happened in the background. I think we're going to see a number of players going out, either being sold or loaned, and of course, the thing that the press is fixated on, and of course, a lot of Liverpool fans are fixated on, is, are they going to sign anybody? And so, yeah, I'm not quite sure what to say on that. It all comes down to, are they just going to sign somebody for the sake of signing somebody, or signing somebody because it's somebody that they legitimately want? That's what I think the issue is. I think in any given season that you always want to bring in new blood, even if you win the league. But at the same time, I think that a lot of things have happened here where there's a big squad of players. A lot of academy players have been put through their paces and shown well. So it's an enlarged squad. You've got a new manager. You've got Michael Edwards back. You've got Richard Hughes, and you've got a lot of changes. So what is the goal? What is the goal? They don't need a major rebuild. They don't need a major rebuild. Are the players available that they really want and can afford, and who want to come to Liverpool, of course? We've just seen a situation where there was one player that they did want, but he didn't want to come, ultimately. So it's a complicated situation. And do they sign players just because? I think we always come back to Chelsea when we talk about transfers, don't we?
Yeah.
Because they have the revolving door and seem to be stuck in a situation where the ownership seem hell-bent on signing young talent. And the spin-off is that the young talent that they're producing, they're having to sell, because selling a Conor Gallagher, a homegrown player, is a pure profit. And so it's very questionable, and there are lots of people questioning it, and so they should, because does it really make sense? But with Liverpool, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what's going to happen, whether they will bring anybody in. But one thing you can rest assured on, there are players going out. I think there are players going the other way.
Yeah, one thing we know about Liverpool too is they don't just buy to buy. They have, certain targets. I think, obviously they want a number 6, but they want one that kind of is in the mold of Zubimendi. I mean, he's a fantastic talent, so there's not like a lot of them out there. But if they don't get their guy, they're not going to just turn around and buy somebody, like you said, just to buy. Obviously the Calcedo situation last year, Lavia situation, they just didn't want to come. They wanted to go to another team. Interesting enough, when I watched a little bit of that game, all three of the midfield was Lavia, Calcedo, and Enzo, which I thought was very interesting for the kind of three guys that all kind of do the same thing. Anyway, that's for another talk.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Look, it's. I know that quite a lot of fans are saying that they're being too picky, but ultimately, what do they want? I mean, if he really wants to put in a number 6, he's got one in Endo. He's got a number 6 there in Endo, who I thought had a good season last year, and he's got a young, talented player, the Jetic, coming through as well. So he's got a couple of out-and-out players who you could say were number 6 players, and I think that they're both good. So he may not rate them as highly, but what does he do? Does he go and buy another, or do they bring in another number 6 who's a comparable level, but it's not really who they want? So it's, you can talk about this until you're blue in the face, and I think that they're going to do what they're going to do, and whether Liverpool are too picky or not, I think time will tell that. Time will tell that. I don't know who else that they would go for if they want to fill that position.
Yeah, there's nobody. Yeah. Fofana, my Yusuf Fofana guy that I like, he's officially at AC Milan, so that's out the door too. But anyway, Coach, the Fantasy Premier League, I'm 1 point ahead of you with one game to go today, and we have 15 people in the league, and we'd like to have as many people in the league. The code is CHPX42, and if you just Google Premier League Fantasy Football or Fantasy Soccer, you'll be able to find it, sign up, sign in, and use the code to join our league. Coach, what you had an interesting lineup. You went heavy with the big dogs with Haaland and Mo Salah, and they did pay off for you.
Oh, you're talking about fantasy football?
Yeah.
I was let down by Rodri. I mean, how dare he get injured? I'm not sure if he's injured or if he was rested, but I know that with Manchester City that you've got to be very careful as to who you pick because he rotates so much. And so I know that in the past, if I'm going to pick a Manchester City player, I'll pick Ederson because he starts in goal, although I thought he had a terrible game on Sunday. Ederson in goal, and of course Haaland. And then Rodri, he typically doesn't rotate, so I'm guessing he must have picked up a knock. And also Mark Gay, he let me down as well. So, yeah. How dare
Yeah, and for me, Foden played the second half. I'm like, wait a second, why isn't he starting?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's interesting about fantasy football was I put West Ham's James Ward-Prowse in because under David Moyes, he's a great player for a David Moyes team, restarts and all that kind of stuff. But I guess under the new regime, he's a bench player now. So I might have to think his status as well. So we'll see.
It's fun. It's always fun. Coach, Brentford this week, and then Manchester United a week ahead. I like. I want to mention one more thing about Slot. He was they were talking about, competing for the league and this and that, and he said, really, my focus now is on Brentford, which, us being from the Boston area, sounds eerily familiar to a Patriots coach, Bill Belichick, who always just said, we're on to the next one, the next game. And he also said that, now we have a full week to work with them. So I think what I mentioned before, I'm also liking that his approach to the game and just take it game by game. I know it's a cliche. He didn't say it that way, but I like that we have a guy that's focused and that's articulating very well, like to us fans after the first game, how he likes to play. He mentioned a little tactical switch that they made. He talked about what he saw from the other team. I really, really enjoyed that, and I can't wait to hear more of his press conferences and the way he kind of looks at the game, because we only have a handful of games, and now they count. So that'll be great.
Well, one thing that's in his favor is is I don't think Liverpool have a midweek game for a while yet. Not quite sure when the Champions League kicks off, but I know certainly up to Brentford and up to Manchester United, there are no midweek games.
Yeah.
So this is prime time for him in terms of he hasn't had a lot of the players there because of the internationals. Now he does. And as you say, they're having games that matter, games that count. So he's doing some real legitimate work with his team now out on the practice field.
Yeah.
And of course, each game will bring a different challenge. Brentford, well-coached team. Manchester United, I did watch their game and they just about got over the finish line.
Yeah.
They just about made it. But, yeah, they've got a lot of talent and obviously they caused Liverpool problems last season, so there's no reason why they can't again. And the game's in Manchester, so yeah, interesting games, interesting time.
For sure. Coach, thank you as always for your insight. Liverpool fans, 3 points on the board, on to Brentford, and we will talk to you guys next week. Thank you for listening. Take care, everybody. Liverpool fans, thank you so much for listening to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and would greatly appreciate your support. Please leave a 5-star review and feel free to email us at tlrlfcpodcast@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Till next time.